Eagle family, and welcome to another episode of the Eagle Exchange. I'm Chancellor Carrie Dixon, and I'm honored to bring you conversations that highlight the people, history, and impact of North Carolina Central University. Today's episode features two timely and meaningful discussions. First, we'll reflect on Black History Month and NCCU's contributions to Black history. Then we'll turn our focus to student health and wellness, highlighting important research centered on heart health. Joining me for our first conversation is Mr. Andre Vann, coordinator of University Archives and instructor of public history. And we have Dr. Charles Johnson, associate professor and chair of the Department of History. Together, they help preserve, interpret, and teach the rich history of North Carolina Central University. Thank you both for joining me today.
Glad to be.
So as we think about this month being Black History Month, will you reflect for our listeners, how does your experiences being a part of the NCCU mission and understanding the community that we serve, how would you put in context what Black History Month means to you as a part of the NCCU community?
I'd start this way.
Okay, Dr. Johnson.
Sure. I think first we should probably help the audience appreciate what history is.
That's right.
So history is everything that's occurred, right? And then it's also a narrative. And it is the professional historians who help to create that narrative.
Yes.
So what that means is what gets remembered, right? Professional historians determine that.
That's right.
So for a very long time, African American history didn't have the same pride of place, for example, as U.S. history and European history and the like. But it's hugely important because we understand who we are through the understanding of our history.
Right.
So for all Eagles, it's imperative that we appreciate what it is, to be an Eagle, and we get that understanding through the study of our history.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I certainly agree. I think it's a great opportunity, I think, to really give notice of the great contributions of Dr. Carter G. Woodson and others who were, as we would say in 1915 and on, were coming through the wilderness almost in terms of those experiences that African Americans faced, and to try to find a way, I think, to kind of cull and bring into the public consciousness the contributions of African Americans. I think that was an important facet, a change moment, as some might call it, as we sort of think about history. And so for me, Black History Month is just a great opportunity, I think, really to reflect, but also to remind others that, the history is still growing. And, and we're not satisfied yet with what we have. We're great in terms of looking at what we've done, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And we're thankful for that great opportunity to bring Black history to the forefront, and thanks to Dr. Johnson and fine folk, we have an entire calendar this month.
Oh yeah, thank you, thank you. So we want all of our young people and our alums to have a sense of pride, in North Carolina Central. So it's imperative that we, the Department of History, I'm charged with that, that they have that appreciation, right? Because in reality, some of them set their ambitions based upon who they think they have been, where we've been before. And if you look at our history, you see you can find Eagles anywhere. You can go anywhere from North Carolina Central.
And, as I think about that pride, we always say Eagle pride amplified.
Oh, absolutely.
And the history, I always, when I speak to audiences, alumni, others, I always acknowledge the fact that I stand on the shoulders of many giants. We have legacy, we have history. NCCU has made a positive impact in this community across the state and globally. And the leaders who have come through these doors, when we think about leadership, we think about how NCCU has served in the leadership space, in leadership development, advocacy, social change, social justice. What do you think, or how do you reflect on that as we made that impact and still do throughout history?
So it's palpable for me. I mean, I grew up, I'm a proud son of Durham, and I grew up within walking distance of the institution. In fact, I was born in Lincoln Hospital, and I went home to a community right across from Chidley Hall that Henry McKinley Mishaw Sr. built. So I was born in a black hospital, delivered by a black physician, right, and went home to a black community built by an African American. But and he studied here. Of course, he's a proud graduate of North Carolina Central University. But I say that to say that we have prepared the leadership that helped to develop one of the strongest black communities in the United States. And we have developed a leadership that has made a national impact. So if we think of, for example, Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor of Atlanta, the first African-American mayor of a large city, and the role that he did. I remember as a youngster going to Atlanta, my dad would drive us down, and what that looked like compared to like where we are today. And a lot of that was a result of, of his impact. So North Carolina Central has so many has produced so many outstanding leaders. Current mayor, Leonardo Williams, former mayor, Elaine O'Neill. I mentioned Henry McKinley Mishaw, Dan Blue. We could go on and on with that. Folks who have really contributed to the community here.
Indeed, I would say for this institution, just last year celebrated the 100th anniversary as the nation's first state-supported liberal arts institution, and to be, as I would call it, the baby of the bunch. This institution was born in 1910, among the youngest of the historical black colleges and universities, but you never would have told us that because they have lived a life larger than sometimes the expectation that people have had on us. And certainly the alums who have gone out and have been industrious in almost everything. From those who understand our university's commitment to public service, real service to real people doing great work, whether they're elected officials, whether they're in the field of business, religion, you name it. The university and its alums have understood that when there's a need, you find a place and you get that great opportunity to serve. And there's an entire list that I can rattle off right now from the arts. I talk about Andre Leon Tyler.
There you go.
One of the best of the best. University has some of his materials here, as you might be aware. One would think about the first mayor in the South, along with Maynard Jackson, was Mayor Clarence Lightner.
That's right. That's right, over in Raleigh.
Mayor of Wake County, Raleigh.
Good football player too.
Great football player, right? And came to this institution, graduated, and went out. Ran his family funeral home over in Raleigh. That's an example, right? One could think about such examples as, I have to talk about Dan Blue, graduate class of 1970. I always remind him, because I'll be speaking at his church on Sunday. And I reminded him, I said, well, you graduated in 1970, I was born that year. And one who became the first African-American speaker of the entire House in the North Carolina General Assembly. That's some real import and real impact upon this city, state, and nation. But they didn't rest there.
G.K. Butterfield, your good friend. Eva Clayton. We could go on and on. Right. And I have to mention Dr. Helen Edmonds. You're a soror. If I'm going to return to the Department of History.
That's
so
right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, just listening to the two of you talk, even before we started the show, I just learned so much from you and the both of you.
Thank you.
You've been on this campus, you've been in the community, you know what this campus has done for the Bull City and the community that surrounds the Hayti community. And we have so much history even on campus, as you mentioned, Mr. Vann, and I love to hear you talk about the timeline of history. And as we think about our founder, James E. Shepard, and the courage he had to have with his leadership to really advocate and fight for the sustainability of this great institution. But any reflection on some of the leaders that you have encountered here at the university and something that you remember that's unique about them?
I'll let you start with this one.
I have lived a blessed life here
Yes.
at this institution. and had the privilege of meeting every chancellor, going back to Dr. Whiting, although I didn't come when I came in. Dr. Whiting had retired by then, but I had the privilege of escorting him around whenever he would come to visit, and to know I came in under Dr. Tyronza Richmond, who had formerly served as Dean of the School of Business, and a most gentlemanly man who really led us by example, right? Was willing to make himself available whenever, you see him walking the campus and he couldn't move, much like you, couldn't move. Students always endeared themselves unto him.
And to that point, let me just say, he was on my thesis committee.
Really?
Yeah. So Dr. Richmond, when he had just come out of the chair.
Great. And then I had a chance to privilege to have Dr. Donna Benson. So that was the first woman to serve as interim chancellor.
Yes.
And then the third chancellor we had in 3 years ends up being the great Judith S. Chambers, of which I graduated first class. And when I got my master's degree in 1995, first job I received was right here at North Carolina State University, working in the history department as an adjunct. And so ever since then, having a chance to kind of know every chancellor since then, and offering to them the guidance. Usually the first day I'm giving them a tour somewhere around this campus, helping them to feel at home and feel welcome and to know this institution. And that has really meant something to me. And I just think about the great burden that you all carry sometimes. Everybody sees the wonderful, beautiful thing, but I don't think they see the hard work that has to go into putting that wood on that fire. To keep the house, keep that fire burning and keep this institution going. And so we owe a debt to all of you all for taking on that great challenge. And we're thankful this institution is here because of the leadership.
Yes.
I was speaking to Professor Vann about this just before we started. So I grew up in the Emory Woods subdivision off Riddle Road, and there were, I want to say, 5 institutional leaders that lived in that community.
Really?
Yeah. So you had George Shipman, who went down to Livingstone.
Yes.
Then you had Marion Thorpe, who went out to Elizabeth City. Then you had Spurgeon Dallas Simmons, who went to St. Paul's first in '82 and then to Virginia Union. All right. And I think he left here as provost and went to St. Paul's. And then you had Mickey Burnham. Right. And who
also
Elizabeth
City
and NCCU, and Bowie.
Yes,
later,
and Bowie,
And then you had also Chancellor Whiting, and I had the distinct privilege of interviewing him just a few years before he died. I want to say he was 102.
That's
102.
Right.
What a blessing!
About 102, and
what
he had a lot he wanted to get off his chest about the role that he had played, because he did so much to transform the university, in terms of our growth and so forth, while he was chancellor, and he wanted people to appreciate that.
Yeah, and I know that was a meaningful conversation
absolutely.
that you'll never forget.
Absolutely.
I mean, that type of knowledge and wisdom and understanding of, I just love things like that. I love to hear those stories. And I always say to our campus community that we control the narrative, that we are our greatest ambassadors. And NCCU is a university that has been rich in legacy and history that we have to acknowledge and give homage to those who have come before us, who've paved the way. And it's just our responsibility now to take it to higher heights, and so it's just really a privilege and an honor to have such great leaders at this university. And being the second permanent woman, I'm glad you mentioned Donna Benson, Dr. Benson being the first interim, and then Deb Saunders-White, Dr. Deb Saunders-White being the first permanent female chancellor here. And both of them just dynamic women, and all the women on the campus, as you look at even some of the buildings with their names on it. And so there's a history of this university that we definitely want to continue to tell the story, and we want our students to know. We talked about that, right?
Right. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that Donna Benson was a historian.
Yes.
And that Julius Chambers was a
historian. Okay. Right? I see the pattern.
There you go, the Department of History.
Yes. That's great.
And can I also just share just a bit as well, and this kind of goes back to the early formative years of the institution. And I'm lucky to know the family, the Eagleson. So Eagleson Hall is still standing.
Yes.
There's a wonderful woman, Miss Frances Marshall Eagleson, and known as Miss E. E was for efficiency, and she was Dr. Shepard's right hand. And these are the formative years, like 1920.
Yes,
she came here in 1921, first African American woman to graduate from Indiana University, by the way.
Okay.
There was not one thing that moved on this campus that she didn't play a role in.
Right.
So I tell folk, I said, don't say that the university didn't provide opportunity for women, because
That's
that was
right.
a woman who ran every aspect of this campus, and Dr. Shepard relied upon her, along with his wife, Ms. Anna D. Shepard, for almost any and every decision. And she served and eventually retired as the as a registrar here at this great institution. And so that's the example of someone who came in the 1920s, served almost 40 or more years here at this institution. And she's among that wonderful group of folk who the givers, those who gave up their time, most importantly their service to this great institution.
Yes. Well, one final question.
Sure.
As we think about the future, what role do you think North Carolina Central University will continue to play in shaping the next chapter of Black history?
Well, I think we'll continue as we have to educate the educators across the state, and we can't underestimate just how important that role is. I'm hopeful that we'll continue as we have to create international ties for our students and opportunities for our students. We have for many years been very much embedded in the local communities here in Durham in so many different ways. The research that I do is, much of it is community engaged, and that started really with early E. Thorpe, going back to the 1960s, and then it came down through Percy Murray and Freddie Parker, who are outstanding faculty members in our department. But continuing to have, I think, that engagement with the community. Black Durham, and I know that we don't have time to get into it, I'd love to talk about that some, but it was an incredible African-American community, and we're thinking about, what made it go. The cornerstones of that community were NC Mutual, of course, Lincoln Hospital, we talked about, Mechanics and Farmers Bank, and then 1910, North Carolina Central University, right?
Yes.
So continuing in that role of helping to buttress what is a tremendous community here in Durham, and being really engaged in the community and connected to, like the historic Hillside High School, right? And really building real ties, so that when students are at Hillside, when the Hornets are thinking, where am I going to school?
Right.
There's no question.
No question at all.
There's no question,
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Brandon?
Right. I would say this institution, I would consider it an oasis in the middle of the desert. And I really mean that, because we are a resource institution, a place where people know we have blossomed and bloomed right along with the Durham community. And that's important, and they are just as receptive of this institution as anyone else. There's some people who never graduated from this institution, but they are one of the greatest supporters and defenders of this institution at each and every level.
That's right.
And I think we're glad to say we were born in 1910, and we're still thriving, and we're still growing, and we're going right along with the community. And I think that's important. And I'm certain that the next generation, when we talk about the future, right? That next generation students who are graduating from here, and the question is, what would they do with that service? And our hope is that they would find a great opportunity at some place to offer their talents and their skill sets, and to go out, transform, and that's what this institution has been. I'm not going to talk too long, but
no, go ahead, preach, brother.
A transformative institution.
That's
and
right.
There's not one place where you cannot find a graduate of North Carolina Central University that has not gone into a certain place and transformed that place and made it better.
Exactly.
And that is a part of the long legacy, I think, that we have here. And the great students who graduate from here, who I hope are listening in and will be reading in about this, that they will also understand that place, and they have a place in society. And we will hold them accountable for that.
That's right.
And we ask them to come back and support the institution and make it better.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Vann and Dr. Johnson, for sharing your insight and helping us reflect on the powerful history that continues to shape NCCU. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we'll shift our focus to student wellness and heart health. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Eagle Exchange. LaShawn Wordlaw, Associate Professor in the Department of Public Health Education. Dr. Wordlaw conducted research on Heart Healthy You, a pilot amid a pandemic, a multimedia on-campus campaign designed to increase awareness about heart health among students with a focus on nutrition and physical activity. Thank you for joining me today, Dr. Wordlaw.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and you know that physical activity piece, that's something I need to work on.
We all can do better.
Yes, I can do so much better with that, Dr. Wordlaw. Don't hold it against me.
No, don't tell me you've let go of your New Year's resolutions already.
I have let it go already. I have the same one every year. I'm going to do better with work-life balance, and it never comes to fruition. But you are here to tell me, as well as our listeners, about the Heart Healthy You initiative that started during the pandemic. And tell me what inspired you, or what was, most interesting for you to start this initiative during a global pandemic, and give us some insight as to what you were thinking at that time and what you wanted to accomplish.
Okay, so the Heart Healthy You project really came from my experience as a teacher.
Okay.
Here at NCCU. I teach a health behavior course, and when I'm talking to the students about hypertension, high blood pressure, there's this glaze that's in their face. And so what I started doing was taking a blood pressure cuff to class. When I made it personal and they felt it was relevant, then they became more engaged. So that's where the idea came from, kind of marrying practical ideas with student motivation.
Right. And I bet some of that glaze was probably them thinking, oh, I'm too young to be thinking about my blood pressure. Is that kind of some of the feedback you were hearing in the classroom?
Well,
reaction? Absolutely,
because really, particularly in the United States, heart disease is marketed as a disease of older adults. But the truth is, when you get 65, you don't just get heart disease.
Right.
It's actually something that starts in young adults. So researchers have found plaque in the arteries of adolescents. So it has a lot to do with the diet.
Yes.
Now, college students have a core set of risk factors that increase their risk for heart disease, not just in the future, but now. And those include high fat, high salt, high sugar diets, physical inactivity, poor stress management, and insufficient sleep.
So everything that seems good and sounds good and tastes good don't necessarily help us.
No, it
at
doesn't.
all.
It doesn't.
Right.
And the project actually started in the fall of 2019 and just carried over into the pandemic. We were blindsided just like the rest of the world and had to pivot our focus. So while we did talk about physical activity and diet, we incorporated other aspects.
So when we think about diet, and we know what the statistics say around the obesity rates, especially in the African American community, what have some of your research and the project has led to, and as far as educating young people more about eating choices and making good choices around what they eat, because of the research that you found with the arteries being clogged at early ages now?
Well, the interesting thing about the project is that students were key stakeholders.
Okay.
So we actually did a focus group and asked them what kind of materials would they want to see on campus and where we should place them. So we had print materials as well as digital materials. So one of the things that we learned, which we probably already knew this, is they know they should eat better, but they still have trouble eating better. What does better mean?
Right.
What does better look like? Right. And again, we were confronted with this idea that heart disease is in the future, not something for them to worry about now.
Right. So as far as the eating piece, because I know just in my volunteer work in the community, a part of the Links Incorporated, we actually had an initiative in place where we were trying to start at the elementary school level with healthy choices in eating and giving ideas, recipes, and things for fifth graders. Things that they can eat that, you know, are healthy to kind of minimize the whole obesity epidemic and other things that are related to heart issues that we encounter as a community or as a population. So when we think about that, the response that I usually hear is eating healthy is expensive. So how do you kind of talk young people through that piece of it and giving them options and choices of what eating better can look like that may not be as expensive as they perceive it to be?
Yes, we do talk about that, and we actually do a cost analysis.
Okay.
So if you look at what one fast food meal costs, and when you eat it, it's gone, versus buying groceries that last over time, it's actually more cost effective. Now, there are some other places where students can kind of cut corners when it comes to eating healthy, but the overall idea is that students in general believe that going to vending machines and getting fast food because they're busy are easier, quicker ways. Cost is always an issue. We do talk about that in class, how cost over time really matters and what it costs you in terms of your health, not just financially.
Right. Great, great. So tell me about the campaign.
Yes, the campaign. The campaign is called Heart Healthy You. And it started with a student profile.
Oh,
So
nice.
first we looked at data about NCCU students. Do they eat fruits and vegetables now? How physically active are they? What is the average body mass index? And how do they self-rate their health? So this was our guide in terms of our benchmark to see if we could move the needle a little bit, particularly when it came to physical activity and fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
These are smaller versions of what we had around campus, but this
Let
one
me
was
help.
in the cafeteria, eating healthy on the go. This is one of the campaign materials that students like the most.
Okay.
And they wanted it in the cafeteria.
Oh,
The
I love
students
that.
were very excited about having the reminder where the food is, not just having the reminders in classes and then going on about the day. So we had several cues in key places. So this is one.
So, Dr. Wordlaw, I have to say, I was guilty, but I'm glad that you put this on this flyer here, because when I was in college, I would get a salad, and guess what I would add with it? French fries. And at least here it says, you eat the salad instead of French fries. But these are great tips, because when we're young like that, we just think anything that we eat, it's going to be okay.
Yes, and I actually think that students could do the 80-20 rule. Eat healthy 80% of the time and 20% have the fries.
I love that.
So start
I love
small and build over time.
Yes.
Same with physical activity.
Yes.
Walk 15 minutes and then over time build it. It's very difficult to change habits, and it's difficult to
Yes.
change them all at once.
Right.
So it's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Yes.
One bite at a time. So we are just taking small chunks in order to move the needle a little bit on the campus.
I like that. And I like the 15-minute walk too, with the sloping hills.
Yes.
Here at NCCU,
Yes.
I'm sure
Yes.
those hills definitely help them get that walking exercise in. So that's great. And drinking water.
And drinking water.
Yes, that's
Drinking
a
water.
big one.
And using fruit as your grab and go.
Yes.
Nothing's
like that.
easier than grabbing an apple on the go or having a parfait on the go. So there are
Things that,
options.
and they're not expensive.
They're not expensive,
Right. A parfait or apple.
in general, it's about changing the social norm.
Yes.
So making it an acceptable choice
Right.
on campus.
Well, that sounds great.
And then I just have one more to show.
Okay.
Take the stairs. Guess where we place these?
At the elevators.
That's right. At the elevators.
How did I know?
Yes.
How did I know?
At the elevators in the buildings to
Yes.
remind students to take the stairs. So again, small changes over a longer period of time make a difference.
Definitely, definitely. I really do appreciate that. So how did the students respond to the campaign? Have you heard any feedback from them? Are they saying, Dr. Wordlaw, I'm struggling with this, or Dr. Wordlaw, I'm really doing this, doing a great job. I see the progression that I'm making. I see the 80-20 is working for me. What kind of feedback have you gotten from our students?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So it's mixed, because remember, this campaign was launched right when COVID was happening and lockdown and et cetera.
Yes.
But we also had an Instagram account.
Okay.
And on that Instagram account, students were actively showing, look, I'm still drinking my water. Look,
Right.
I'm jogging in place. Look, I'm going on a hike once they were able to go outside. So there were students engaged.
And that's a really good point, thinking back to the pandemic, because everyone was so isolated.
That's right.
We were in our homes, and when you're in your home and being isolated during that time, no one has ever experienced that. So what were you doing? Sitting around, probably watching Netflix and eating, and probably not eating the right foods. So it's good to hear that they still kept up the promise of the campaign and really made good strategic choices around what they were eating during that time, and doing some type of physical exercise. And I was thinking back to the pandemic time, and we were a family. We are a family who kind of fell into, let's get a puppy. During the pandemic. So I have a pandemic dog now. But we used to walk, just go to the park outside. Being outside was a big thing because so many people were, in their houses and isolated in the house. So just being out, walking the dog, riding a bike. So those types of things are very important as we think about them. So what types of challenges and unexpected lessons have emerged while you were running this pilot and this campaign during COVID, as such a complex time? What kind of challenges did you encounter?
Well, COVID interrupted the campaign. So an important part of the campaign was to have the students go to student health and get their blood pressure, get their cholesterol, get their blood glucose. That was all a part of the campaign, because we know that personal data, that's what I learned in my class, personal data is really what motivates change. So we were not able to do that part. But what we did instead is to focus on mental health. Students were struggling with anxiety. The world was turned upside down. So we incorporated mental health into the campaign.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because mental health is real, and we're seeing even more so post-COVID. As we think about the landscape of higher education has changed, the world has changed, and the changes that we all are encountering have definitely weighed a lot on our young people, and on college campuses. We see it everywhere. Across the country, and even in our adults, we see it everywhere. People are really struggling. So I'm glad to hear that was a part of the campaign.
Yeah, it was a natural fit, honestly, because physical activity actually helps with mental health.
Okay.
It releases those endorphins and you feel better. So being able to talk about not social distance, you want to stay physically connected. You couldn't be physically connected, but we wanted people to be socially connected, to still be able to reach out, address anxiety, and address those concerns, was definitely a part of the campaign. So it was a natural fit.
That makes a lot of sense. So as we think about, as we were closing this conversation, what would you say to our listeners that you hope they will carry with them as they're hearing this conversation today, hearing about your research, the campaign that was put in place, hearing the knowledge that you just shared with us? I mean, I learned so much just in this short period of time talking with you about things that I really didn't know or perceive to be differently from what class. This 80-20 thing, I think I can do the 80-20. I think that just really helped me.
Get your foot in the door.
Yes, that helped me a lot, knowing that there's a such thing as 80-20. I love that. But what types of, what would you like to leave our listeners with as you have them to think about even more what healthy heart, and with this being Heart Healthy Month,
That's right.
What would you say to them?
That's right. So we also have Valentine's Day. That's
Yes, that's true.
And so I want to encourage people. It might sound a little weird, but I would encourage people to love your heart.
Oh, yes.
And I want to do a demonstration and have you do this with me.
Okay, I would love to.
So your heart is about the size of your fist.
Okay.
So if you contract that fist, that is the heart when it is pumping the blood. And then you open, that's the heart at rest. Oh. So this is the systolic, the number at the top, which should be less than 120.
That's what I was going to ask you. Less than 120.
Yes. And this is the diastolic, heart at rest, less than 80.
Okay.
So know your number.
Yes.
And monitor it regularly.
Definitely. And I'm glad to hear that our students know what that range of normacy looks like.
Yes.
Yes. Less than 120.
And less than 80.
And less than 80.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Dr. Wordlaw for joining us today and for providing us with great information around her research, her expertise, the perspectives that are important to us and important to our communities, to our Eagle family. Thank you for tuning in to the Eagle Exchange as we continue this conversation with such great opportunities to bring guests on that will share important information during Black History Month as well as during Heart Health Month. We are just blessed to have such great expertise on this campus. So be sure to follow North Carolina Central University on all social media platforms for more episodes and stories highlighting the people and partnerships moving our Eagle community forward. I'm Chancellor Carrie G. Dixon, and this has been the Eagle Exchange. Thank you for listening, and as we always say, Eagle Pride Amplified.